Okay, today we are talking about the Saltmarsh. A few things. I have already cut out my pattern on tracing paper and laid it out. You'll notice on the back and the front on the pattern, it'll say connect to. So this is my back, which is E, and then the waistband is F. You want to make sure that you get those two together and tape them and make one continual pattern piece. I think to save paper, they separated them, but those two need to be connected on the fold, and the same with the front. There'll be another waistband piece that you'll have to attach to the front. Front and back will both go on the fold. Here's my front. Waistband will go on the fold. I have to lay mine out not on the fold because I don't have enough fabric and I really want to use this fabric to do it. They will also have the waist tie, and they'll have two separate pieces, and then they tell you to add fabric for in between, and you can run that along the whole length of your 2 yards of fabric. Pockets you'll cut 4 of, so you'll trace one out and then you can flip it and trace the other one out. Make sure you have all your notches on this one. Again, we need to make sure that our pockets are lining up. There are some darts in the back, so you'll see this asterisk on pattern piece E, and then you'll have 2 notches up at the top on piece F, and then that's how you're going to create your dart. Okay, so I think I'm ready to pin and cut out. The first couple of steps are talking about the waistband. You'll have your waistband piece. This is going to go on the fold. You'll notice this little square box around it, and that is where your interface is going to go. And then this is your buttonhole mark. So when you open up your fabric from the fold, so if this was my fold line right here, your interface piece will go on that whole length of the square. So you'll just repeat that square on the other side. And then your buttonholes you're going to want to mark on the front of your fabric. And then the interface you're going to put on the wrong side of your fabric. I sometimes use tracing paper by Clover, and this is really great, especially when you're doing darts or you have multiple things. So on the wrong side of your fabric, you can make a carbon copy of the pattern. So you would place the carbon side down, and then you can just trace right over with a tracing wheel and trace what you need out, and then it will copy onto your fabric. But that's a great way to do stuff like this and things that are in the center that are really hard to get to, instead of, you can't really notch in the center of your fabric. You notch on the outsides when you're making all your marks. So this stuff's great. I do say if you're going to try it on the front, to always make sure with a test sample and make sure it comes out before you put anything on the right side of your fabric. Any markers, friction pens, anything you use. I always tell people to make sure that they test it first, and then if it works, then you can do it on the real fabric. So the book has you serge the bottom edge of your waistband. I am going to fold mine up 1/4 of an inch, so then once I go to attach it and it's flipped, I will have a clean edge. I won't have a serge on there. I just think it's a nicer finish on the inside. And then when you go to sew your waistband together, if you're doing it how I am with the 1/4 inch, just make sure you open that back up before you sew this together, your ends together. So then when you open it back up, you can refold those because they're going to have you press the seam open and then you'll fold those pieces back up. But you want to make sure that your seam is all the way open when you sew it your waistband together. Okay, so we're talking darts on the back of the skirt. You'll have 2 notches up at the back. You're going to want to line those up, and then you should have an asterisk where on your pattern piece where your dart ends. I like to draw a marker line to make sure that I can actually see the dart, so I have it on both sides. You can probably see it very faintly, the blue. I pin basted. If you're new to sewing, I suggest maybe basting by hand to make sure that you get it really accurate. I like to start my darts from the smallest point and leave my strings loose. I will show you when I get to the sewing machine, but that way I can get a really precise point on it and put my needle in right at the dart point. And you don't want to backstitch or lock this. That's what I was talking about. You want to leave your bobbin and top thread long. And then you can sew all the way down, and then when you hit the end, you can lock that stitch. And then I like to tie these off by hand. So this is what I was talking about. I have my bobbin and my top thread out long, and I'm gonna push those to the back. And then when I set my fabric through, I'm gonna find my little asterisk that they marked on the pattern. That was the point of my dart, and I'm gonna put my needle in right through there. So here's the end of my dart. Here's my widest point down here. So I just took a needle and I'm gonna pull that other string to the same side, and then I can tie the 2 of these off to finish my dart. Then we're gonna do the same thing on the other side, and then we're gonna press them. Okay, step 5, with right sides together, we're gonna pin our pocket bag to the front and backs of our skirts. So this is my back. You can see my pleats. I've already sewn these, but you're going to put right sides together. You're going to line up all your notches with your skirt and the pocket bag, and then you're going to sew these at our 5/8 seam allowance. So when you sew them and open them up, they'll kind of look like little elephant ears, and they'll be attached. And then I'm going to go and press these, and then we'll be ready to finish our edges, and you can finish it however your preferred method is. Zigzag if you have a serger, or if you have an overlock stitch on your machine. So we're going to be talking about step 6. First, you want to make sure that we have our right sides together. So here's my front and my back. You're going to have some slack in this. Remember, we're adding a drawstring, so this is why you have all this extra fabric in here. So you want to make sure that you're lining up your pockets together at the seams at the bottom and at the top and at the bottom, and then your pocket bags, and then you'll have all this extra fabric that will get pulled into the drawstring. So we're going to sew all along the pocket bag at 5/8. We're going to come here and pivot, so we'll carry up 5/8 and then pivot and go all the way down to the bottom of our skirt. So I wanted to talk about, in the book, they have the pocket opening right here. So you'll see that they've sewn down and then they've sewn up from the seam allowance. And just to show you, if you put a ruler on it, you're staying at that 5/8 seam allowance. You're gonna go up and then you're gonna come down from the top edge, and then you'll have this opening that will create the pocket. These notches are not on the pocket. If you missed them, they are on the actual skirt pattern pieces, and then the waistband that we had to tape together in the beginning to make this one whole skirt piece pattern. So I like to sew around my edges first, my 5/8, and then come back in and then sew up my pocket notches. So if you'll notice, I have my ruler out here at 5/8, and if I place this ruler to my dot, I don't know if you can see it, I just lost it, right here, to my dot, I'm at 5/8. I just got done sewing my couple inches up and then down from the top pieces. Remember, you're just lining up the ruler. This is a good illustration too. It's actually a lot better than that one because it's bigger, even though it's talking about another step. But you can see just by putting your ruler there how it kind of follows the seam allowance. So I noticed when I made this skirt that I think it's easier to finish these individually. So like if you're serging, which I'm going to do, I'm going to serge around my pocket and then stop and then restart again. Depending on your serger, some sergers take curves really easily. Mine's a little stiff, so it's easier for me to kind of do these two separate. If you're zigzagging or using your machine, you should be able to go around that curve pretty easily or overlocking on your machine. So I'm going to finish both of those, and then we're on to the next step. Oh, I did want to say, make sure you flip your skirt right side and double check your pockets to make sure that you have enough room inside of them and that you didn't catch any fabric or anything like that. If you're worried about it, baste it first in a colored thread. Baste these lines in and then flip it over and check it, and then if you like it, then you can sew over top of your colored thread basting and then pull that out. Okay, so I'm going to go finish these edges, and then we're on to, we're going to attach our pockets up at the top. We're going to put a stitch in so they don't wiggle about. Okay, so up top I sewed my pocket down to the front. Make sure you sew it to the front and not to the back with the pleats. And then this is really important that you press, give this a really good press. It says to press the seam of the pocket and all the way down towards the front of the skirt. And then I think we're ready to get our waistband ready. Okay, so I have pinned my waistband in. A couple of things. You want to make sure that you're right on center front and center back. So if your markings got lost, go ahead and remeasure on each side to make sure, because you want your buttonholes right in between there, so when it's flipped over, it's perfectly centered. You'll be attaching it with your finished edge, however you finished it. I turned mine up if you serged or overlocked. That's going to be on the bottom. We're right sides together. Make sure your darts are facing the same way so you don't have one going left and one going right. They should be facing center back when you sew. Make sure that, so if you have a little bit of slack on either or, sometimes your fabric stretches between the two of them, so sometimes it's just a matter of pulling it one or the other when you're sewing, keeping one taut and one a little bit looser to make them fit. If you have like a 1/2 inch, another option is you can either, depending on what side it's on, if it's on the dart side or on the waistband side, you can either open up the waistband and decrease or increase it if you're missing some to make it fit better, or you can open up the top of your darts, and then if you needed a 1/2 inch, you would just take 1/4 and 1/4. You'd want to take the even amount from the same darts. You don't want to have one bigger dart and one smaller dart. Okay, so I think we are ready to sew. Okay, so I have my waistband all pinned down. I am about to sew that. They have you, I call it stitch in the ditch, so you want to get as close in this little part of the waistband and between the skirt, so this area right here, like the ditch. Make sure your buttonholes are open before you close this up. Yours might look a little different if you serged or you just finished the bottom with a zigzag. Again, I have that 1/4 inch that I just tucked under just for a neater finish. So if you did it my way, just make sure that you catch it underneath, because then you'll have an opening and you'll either have to go back through and fix it, or you can slip stitch it if that happens. So I'm going to go sew that. Okay, so I have my waistband all sewn in. I wanted to talk really quick about the strap. So that's 12 and 13. They have you pin it in half, right sides together. I found that very hard to do. It's a very long piece to turn, and I just didn't want to do it. So I treated it like bias fold tape, and so I pressed it together in half, wrong sides together, and then I pressed up each end to my center, and then if I open this up, you can see I pressed 1/4 inch the end so it would be finished. And then I'm just going to tuck all that in. I'll need to cut those strings off. And then I'm just gonna stitch on the outside and enclose this, so probably about in 1/8, and go all the way around. But I made the skirt once before and it was really tedious. I actually paid my younger daughter at the time like $5 to flip it because it took so long. So you can do it like that if you want, but know that this works too, and I think it's a lot easier. Okay, as far as the drawstring goes, I have it in. I used a big safety pin to pull it through. And then my waist ties, I'll show you up close again. I just finished them at about 1/8 all the way around. And when I tucked that corner edge in to finish it instead of doing it the other way. So I think it looks really nice. It's a nice finish on the drawstring. And then as far as hem goes, I did a rolled hem. So that's just where I folded it 1/4 and then pressed, and then another 1/4 and then pressed. And that created my rolled hem. The book has you, I believe, finish it with just serging it and then folding it up, and that's fine. I think this creates a nicer finished look on the bottom, especially because it's such a wide skirt bottom. So like if you cross your legs and this part hangs over, you don't see a serged stitch. You see a nice, pretty rolled hem on the inside. And that's it. If you guys have any questions, comment below, and thank you for watching my video.